The presentation is named Business at the Speed of Thought, which was about the same as the speed of building this presentation. My name is Nuno. That is not shaving cream. That's my wedding day. I'm Dscape on Twitter. What have I done in the past? I'm a computer science graduate. I did a master's of computer science, worked in IBM research, and mostly on database technology. Worked in Silicon Valley, mostly in open source and database technology. Created a cloud compute company that built things like parts of Windows Azure and no longer on NDA. And my own company that I sold to GoDaddy Inc. I've moved to London and created a consultancy called YLD. So this is YLD. YLD is a tech consultancy. We help large enterprise outpace their competitors by using product, design, culture, and tech. We've been doing it for 6 years, and we're really happy. One thing that is quite different about what we do is that we don't believe in the agency or the consultancy model. We like to work alongside our clients. We make it our mission to create digital capabilities in them. And that's really our focus and where our hearts is at. So there's 3 teams that I really like to focus on. The first one is culture. And what I mean by culture is what is the tasks, rituals, language that you have to do to reinforce behaviors in your organization that align with your mission. Second is strategy versus execution. Very often we have great strategists, but the timing is not right. We don't have the right capabilities. We don't have the right cadence in our products, and our competitors outcompete us. And third, ambidextrous leadership, one of the most important things to actually have the kind of sponsorship that you need to pull out your digital transformation. Right now, you know, the previous speaker I think was from KLM. They have a massive business. They already make a lot of money. They cannot afford to stop exploring the revenues that they have just to do something novel like a startup can. And ambidextrous leadership is that balance that allows you to do that and explore the new revenues. So, which is kind of funny if you think of that notion is we, as humans, we kind of think that we're really great at predicting the future. You know, we look and we say, well, you know, we're pretty good at this. However, we're not really good at innovating. So I'm going to ask a question to see what the audience thinks. In 50 years, a period of 50 years, in the last century, how many companies of the SP 500 did not declare bankruptcy? How many companies survived? What's the percentage of companies? Biggest and strongest companies survived. Anyone? 20? 5, 10? Wow, grim. Well, not that bad. 37% of the companies. This is in the last century. I guess everyone is living in this current century, which we know it's worse. And between those years, only 37% of Fortune 500 companies survived. And those are the reasons where they went bankrupt. So if we were so good at predicting the future, surely the great managers of those companies that knew everything about their clients and that they were so good at everything would have not ended up in that situation. And I think that's a lot because we think that we're very rational, but we're not. Behavioral economics was really like a game changer in the field to show that we're not. And one study that comes to mind is that when they ask 2 groups to go to the cinema, and they say, okay, you're going to watch a movie, and to one group they show, you know, a bunch of kids running around, adolescents, just people having fun, and the other one they show, you know, people of older age like myself, and just, you know, playing things that are more boring and doing things that older people would do. And then they show those 2 groups, the different movies, and then what they do is they measure the time that it takes them from their seat to the elevator. And they find that on average, the people that watch the movie with the older people, well, it just took them on average a lot longer to get to the elevator. And they asked them, you know, why do you think that happens? And of course, people say, well, maybe I was tired that day. I had a flu, you know, didn't sleep well. And that's because, as humans, we think we're great at being rational. We're great at predicting the future. We're actually great at rationalizing. And rationalizing is not bad. I think probably most people in this room are leaders. And if you don't create a rational explanation, a rationalization of what happened for your employees, for the people that follow you, how are they going to feel good about what is happening around them? How are they going to give context to what is happening in the market? How are they going to accept that these companies all went bankrupt? That wouldn't make any sense. So you have to rationalize. It's something that we need to do. So let's try to play a game here. So let's say that every one of you has this amazing idea, okay? Incredible idea, you guys are super, I mean, Uweer had an idea and they were like, you know what, this is really like a game changer. Whatever came to your mind, you're like, oh my God, I'm so excited about this. So how many of you would like that idea to be, you know, an idea of genius, a stroke of genius? No one could have predicted. You know, you are the person that thought you saw what no one else could see. Who here would like to have that idea no one else could see? Like, you know, raise your hand if you wanted to have, like, you know, be a genius. Everyone is looking at you, going like, oh my God, you are amazing. How could you have seen this? You're in the Time magazine. You're just like, you know, like no one else. Now, you know, that's good. And how many of you would like that idea to be status quo? You know, even your mom could have said, you know, yeah, that's a good idea. That seems like something you should invest. Maybe put your money there. How many would like a status quo idea that makes you rich? Raise your hands. Not very many, and a lot of shy. So I'm going to go for the status quo on the shy folks. Well, that's interesting. You know, if you think of success, you think, well, having a contrarian idea is really, really exciting, right? And having a status quo idea, it makes you rich, but it looks like it lacks a bit of soul. But now let's shift it around. What if your idea really goes for the downside, you know? You took a lot of credit, everything exploded, everyone thinks that that was a stupid idea. You know, now all of your family is going to say, we told you so. What were you thinking? Buying Greenland, that's never gonna work. And so, if you're a contrarian and you fail, it hurts you. But what if you tried to make it big and it was a status quo idea? It was just like an idea that everyone thought it was good, but it failed. You're like, well, how could you not have tried, you know? I'm really happy, I'm proud of you, son, you know? Glad that you tried. And so that shapes a lot of what we do. And it shapes how we perceive risk. And I think it's something that is very important in digital transformation. It's key. And if you think, oh, it's not, why is this related? 37% of those companies survived because they could not take on these ideas. Because it's risky. It hurts your reputation. There's biases. And as humans, we seek validation from other humans. And it's the very same reason that makes your projects fail. I really liked it that you guys estimated the SP 500 going bankrupt at a much higher rate than it actually happened in the last century, in the last half of the last century. And I think I know why, because it's not getting any easier. Electricity, 46 years that it took 25% of American population to adopt it. The web, 7 years. And that's still in that century. What happens in this century? Who knows what this is? Anyone can recognize this picture? And what is happening in the event? Pokemon Go. So, Pokemon Go got 45 million active users in less than 2 weeks. That's about 12% of American population. In 2 weeks, adopted this technology, which many of you think, well, it doesn't really compare to the internet or the electricity, does it? And so that just shows the value of the digital platforms we have today. And the ability that it gives us, the unprecedented ability to reach these clients. That's why Uber was able to take all the other taxi companies almost out of business. It's this sole effect. Some entrepreneurs really embraced this, like Jeff Bezos, and they said, it's great. The thing I love about the clients is that they're divinely discontent. Their expectations are never static, they go up. It's human nature. And it goes from this view that you have that says, there's this Johnny Hive, Henry Ford, oh, you don't need horses, you need a car. Johnny Hive, I know what a phone of the future is. Of course you're gonna have a calculator in your pocket at all times. Vision, where they think that they know the perfect user experience, and we, as sheep, go to it, to a point where actually Amazon says, every time we roll up something, because digital platforms are so quick and digital products, users recalibrate their expectation. Market recalibrates their expectation. If we can't move at that pace, we might as well not do anything. Successful digital transformations need to tackle this. They cannot just be what many times I've seen referred when I'm talking to a client in a prospect situation, the same, but better. That's how, if you want to know if your digital transformation is failing, you describe it as the same as better. It takes 2 years, you have 500 people working on it to do the same as better. It's never how digital transformation goes. But there are ways, and it's not all gloom and doom. In this picture, you have Kate. And Kate works in a magazine publisher. They were in the print business. They adopted a lot of the new ways of working to tackle a digital transformation. They funded it by saving costs on their business as a whole. And this picture is of Kate delivering a keynote in one of the most important technology conferences in the world. And she had the main keynote. Now, my team worked with Kate and saw this project happen over 2 years. So this was at Condé Nast. Condé Nast is a magazine publisher. They do things like Vogue, they do Wired, they do GQ. I don't think anyone would consider them a technology company. There's a lot of facts about what they did in this slide, but I'll try to focus on a very simple example of what they did that made them so successful. 2 years, they onboarded all the publications in 11 countries, including Russia, China, and in China you need to be on WeChat. In Russia, you probably can't use all the cloud services that you need. They did it all in 2 years, it's all running. And why does that matter for your products? Well, I'm not going to give an example for them because I don't want to be inaccurate, but if you have a fashion magazine, and now you're online, you're taking revenues out of that, advertisement might be an important part. So you're going to serve ads on that site, and you're going to want it to be relevant to fashion, and you're going to want it to be personalized to the person seeing it, correct? Seems reasonable. But with a platform like this, you can have the same advertisement component being served to a technology magazine. Now, they need to have different configuration, and they need to roll out different ads, different personalization methods. However, when there's a security vulnerability in your code, it needs to be fixed in all of the permutations, in all the countries, in all these magazines. If you find a new psychological study that shows that people engage more with that advertisement and will buy the product more if you react in a certain way, would you want to roll it out just on your top 3 magazines because you don't have enough time to do it across all publications? Or would you like to have a chance to just write a single line of code and push it across the 682 permutations of magazines that you could have? It's impossible to compete if in the future you don't have this kind of ability, because that's what everyone else in Silicon Valley already has. This is not, they're not alone. For instance, I've worked alongside the folks at Trainline and delivering a platform like this. Right now we're working alongside DAZN, that is like rolling effectively the Netflix for sports across so many countries. And it's possible. A lot of people have been doing it. It's something that can be done. So I've talked a lot about the context of digital transformation, so I'm going to leave you with 3 tips. If you asked me 6 years ago if I was a consultant, I would tell you, come on, are you joking? I'm a nerd. 6 years on, I've been working on a lot of these projects. These are 3 of the main learnings that I have. The first is the new kingmakers. This is a phrase coined by an analyst called Redmonk, and they say that developers are the new kingmakers. They're not the new kings, they're the new kingmakers. It's a very important distinction. They are what enables you. If you don't believe it, look at the strategy that Satya Nadella did for Microsoft and how we took the company from actually having a leader that is famous for going on stage and saying, developers, 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 but did nothing of sorts, bought Nokia, did all this crazy stuff that didn't work, to Satya that actually cut all those parts that didn't work, didn't try to compete head-to-head with AWS, and instead tried to augment what they had on VS Code, on Visual Studio, on SQL Server, and try to take it to hybrid cloud architectures, bought GitHub, which is the biggest developer place in the planet where they all converge, and now it's the most valuable company in the world again. So if you think, that shows, you know, they're not the kings, but they were certainly the kingmakers for Microsoft again. And it's not getting any better. Right now, the same analysts say that there's 25 million developers. And they measured it by going to GitHub and seeing how many active people are touching there. And they said that it offsets, that number not being accurate offsets a lot of over-reporting on other sides. But they say that by 2025, for us to do the work that digital transformation needs alone, there will be a need for 100 million developers. So anyone in the audience has an idea how to get 75 million developers in 5 years when we have 25 million in the history of mankind? Ideas? There's not going to be a lot of ideas. At least not, unless one of your ideas is the cloning machine and you actually succeed with the cloning machine. But you don't have that. So how can you mitigate this? You need to think of having a digital factory. The developers that you have, they need to deliver parts of your product. Kind of think like a car in an assembly line. There's a car going in an assembly line. There's someone that, you know, is on the steering wheel. There's someone that's on the wheels, on, like, you know, I'm obviously not very good at car analogies. Someone that is at engines. And those developers, those engineers can focus just on that. It's the robots that glue everything together. Just like the advertisement, you need to have that kind of infrastructure because that reduces the level of what the word developer means. It used to mean someone with a comp sci degree, a master's from Oxford, and then did like this study, and now it means maybe someone that you can train in 6 weeks, but can be very effective at delivering this change in your company. That's incredibly important. The second part brings me to a story from China, where, I don't know if you saw this in The Guardian, it said, company in China creates 47-story building in 19 weeks. How did they do it? They created components. So not only you have to create the factory, the robots to assemble, you need to create the units of innovation, like an ad. And those abstractions are not something that you can bolt into your legacy infrastructure. It's impossible, because you need to create it from scratch. And so componentization is important for you to be able to build a 47-story building in 19 weeks. Only by adopting that, you'll be able to have that pace. Now, the problem with that example takes us to number 2. How can you do it if you're trying to be an ambidextrous leader? You are not going to send your company bankrupt to stop the presses. I'm going to build components because that Nuno guy said that I'm going to build a 47-story high building. You know, no one of you, you're like, no, of course you're not going to do it. You have to innovate from the core because you're ambidextrous leaders. You have to continue to extract revenue from your clients while creating the innovation. Normally when I'm in meetings, I say, so we have to fly the plane while building it, which is not great. So, as an idea, right? So how do you do it? Normally, what we do is first you need experts, and then you need tech. There is no way you can do this without tech, because you need to make sure that if you're changing a wing, that the way that that's happening doesn't take the plane down. And then you just do a slice. Maybe it's you're a retail company and you're like, well, the conversion page on this specific product is 80%, but all of our competitors have it at 90%. And maybe you launch just that, and you do it in the new infrastructure. By doing that, you can say, okay, this has worked. You have 3 months scope of work, and you say, okay, and the company made this much money. You can use that to fuel further investments in technology. And that's the only way that I know to actually do a digital transformation, piece by piece, continuously proving value. The third point is the people aspect, the cultural aspect of doing something like this, and I think it's often understated. When you go to a new product, company, and you are in charge of doing something that requires change, it's like that cartoon that says, who likes change? Everyone says yes. Who wants to change? No one raised their hand. And you have to bring people on a journey. I remember one executive that I know very well, that one of the first things he did is when he got a job that was very difficult, it was a massive company, he asked his boss and he said, can you give me 3 months to study what's here and to study the people? That was the very first thing. And then he made 4 buckets. The first bucket was the people that he was going to hire that he knew were going to help him from previous jobs. Those were, his team. The second bucket was the people that were really on board with these ideas. They seeked him, they tried to have lunch with him. They really cared about what was happening in the company. Then he plotted the people that were against. The people that he could see just had a lot to lose if he was successful. He put everyone else in the neutral pile. He started in those 3 months by analyzing, while he hired in the people he worked with in the past, and tried to create some cadence to show what he meant to the executives without sharing to the wider organization. When that was successful, and they rolled out the first thing, then he tried to bring the people that actually liked the idea of change. As that happens, many of the neutrals become, happy about this transformation, and you then can maybe achieve critical mass. After you do 1 rollout, 2 rollouts, 3 rollouts, and you see like the advertisements are better, subscriptions are better, everything is better. Now maybe you can get to the tipping point where 50% of your organization actually is on board with what you're doing. It's at that point that the people that are against it start to get really worried. If you have 600 people on payroll and you start seeing that the way that you work is going to be completely annihilated by this new way of working, that's really scary. And it was at that time that this executive, what he did, he tripled down on it. He went to his boss and he said, I need 3 times as much money. I'm going to roll this out across the organization. And everyone, whether for or against, either they left the company or they came on board. It might sound like a crazy story, but this story is actually of Bill Scott. Bill Scott is an advisor at YLD, but most importantly, he's the guy that took the old PayPal that looked like an email payment to the PayPal you see today that does acquisitions, that is in coffee shops, and that's the story of what they did. People matter a lot, and you have to be very deliberate with your people plan. So, about to finish, recap of what we talked today. Culture, the ability to control behaviors in your organization that create value for you in whatever is your goal. Strategy and execution, it's not enough to just have good strategy. You also need good cadence. You need to adopt the right tech. You need to know what's happening in the market, and you need to be right about timing, and you can't always predict the future. Third, ambidextrous leadership. It's no longer sufficient just to have one S-curve. As Reed Hastings said when he was at Netflix, he said, I couldn't just be on the mail DVDs business. I need to be on the streaming business or I'll be irrelevant. And if it applies to Netflix on innovation, if they need it, you probably need it too. So my name is Nuno. I'm from YLD. I'm really proud of working with all the clients we work with. Last year, I was humbled to see that 2 of them were voted as the top 3 CIOs of London by CIO magazine. I'm here all day. and come find me if you want to ask any questions. So, thank you.
Thank you, Nuno.